Hey guys, this is Don with Focused Healthy Family with a special note here. We interviewed Dr. Chris Boman a couple of weeks ago, and our plans were to be able to run his interview after our foster care series. Yet, while we were doing the interview, he mentioned a conference that he holds in Southern California called the Health and Homesteading Conference, and it comes live on February 25th. And so we wanted to get this information out, get his interview out in order to help him promote this Health and Homesteading Conference on February 25th. All the information will be on the description here, so pay attention there and enjoy this special interview we did with Dr. Chris Boman.
So I was at a chiropractic conference my second year in school. I'd wanted to be a sports chiropractor, and there I was learning about kind of the holistic chiropractic profession. And when the last speakers came up and he started his talk saying, I can't imagine how frightening it must be for kids to be locked out of a world that they want to be a part of. And the rest of his talk talked all about what the work that he's doing with pediatric chiropractic and specifically with the neurodevelopmental world. So kids on the spectrum, no matter how severe or how, high functioning. And I knew at that moment, I felt that, that jerking in your heart, the goosebumps, however you want to describe it, that this was going to be my lifelong calling and my purpose. And so I dug into everything that I could about pediatric chiropractic from the ICPA, got my diplomate in chiropractic pediatrics. I dove into the program that he did. And 6 months into practice, I realized that I was calling myself a pediatric chiropractor, but I'd never really handled a baby. I didn't have any younger cousins. I didn't have any younger kids. I didn't have, I was like sold out into helping these kids, but I never really like handled a baby. And a mom comes to one of my workshops on neurodevelopmental disorders, and she calls me afterwards, schedules an appointment for her baby. Her baby was 8 months old. Not meeting any milestones, no crawling, no walking, no turning over, had severe torticollis, which is his head was stuck, had severe reflux, had severe constipation. The neurologist was at a point where they're going to prescribe this baby an antidepressant or anti-anxiety medication because the colic was so bad, crying 16 to 18 hours a day. On top of that, the mom had two other boys that were special needs kids. So she was at her wit's end. And so she comes to me, young little whippersnapper. I was 25 years old when I graduated, and said, here's my baby. If what even half of what you said is true, I'm all in, and so brings the baby to me, and I do something called an infrared thermography scan in my office with my kids, and what it showed was severe inflammation and stress all throughout the nervous system, namely upper cervical spine, TL junction, and the L5S1 junction, which is all the main areas for the vagus nerve, interaction, intervention or innervation. So I did his first adjustment, which took all of 2 seconds. And the mom looks at me after doing all these tests from neurologists, all the pediatric, doctors and whatnot. And here I touch this little baby's neck just a little bit to the left and say, okay, go home right away because the baby's going to start pooping, probably going to have a good night's sleep, blah, blah, blah. And the mom's just like, what are you saying? Like, you're 25 years old, freshly graduated from chiropractic school. You do absolutely nothing. It looks like I could do that. It looks like I do that accidentally sometimes. And here you say this is going to fix all my problems. And so I tell the mom yes and come back tomorrow. And so she came back the next day, eyes wide open like a deer in a headlight. She said, my baby has not stopped pooping, and it is the smelliest thing I have ever smelled in my entire life. Like, what is happening? And I told her, like, the baby is getting rid of all the junk that we've been putting in him for the past, 8 months. Come back tomorrow, we'll do the same thing. And so we did adjustment. So we adjusted this baby every single day for 2 weeks. And by that point, he was pretty much completely off his Miralax, pretty much completely off his Prilosec, whatever he was taking for his acid reflux. And the baby had started turning over one direction. So he decreased frequency a little bit. The story goes by about maybe a month or two into chiropractic care, this baby was up and crawling backwards, not quite forwards yet, moving his neck back and forth, was able to decrease OT and PT. And the mom, said something that was more than just a symptomatic release. She said, I have hope again. Like, I didn't know where my baby was going to end up in the next 3 or 4 months, let alone the next 3 or 4 years, what kind of future I would have had, clearly on the failure to thrive, type of schedule. And she's obviously signed up for older kids, signed up herself, signed up for anybody within an arm's distance signed up for my care because of the work that we did. And that story still sticks with me to this day. It's one that I wrote about in my book because it's like, man, if someone would have just told her coming out of the hospital, it's like, you had a very traumatic birth. She pushed for a couple of hours, baby wouldn't go down, so they did a C-section and pulled the baby back up. You had a very traumatic birth. You might want to get your baby checked by a chiropractor. They check for those things. But the medical profession is just looking for pathology. They're not looking for functional deficits. And that's what we look for as chiropractors. And that's why I love being a chiropractor. And that's why I love this congruent life that I live, looking for the root cause in everything, the root cause of health issues, the root cause of, poor food, the root cause, all these, why do we have all this chronic disease? Nature was given everything that it needs to be healthy. What's the reason why we have so much chronic disease in today's era? And so that's my story for you guys.
Well, hello, this is Don.
And Gina.
And we're with Focused Healthy Family. And today we have the wonderful joy of talking to Dr. Chris Boman with Trailhead Family Chiropractic. And we're talking about his work as a pediatric chiropractor. But before we get to that, let's hear from our sponsor.
Today's podcast is sponsored by Q Sciences. Don and I discovered that the supplements we were taking and giving to our children were not being absorbed properly. I was very excited when I found Q Sciences. I was impressed with the quality of the products and that they provide maximum absorption. They have a variety of products, including a Q Max product, which is a combination of 3 products, including vitamins, minerals, and a probiotic. They also have hemp oil, a vitamin B12 spray, a sleep spray, and kids products. I've really seen a difference in how these products are improving how I feel, improving my mental health, and I'm happy with the quality of these products and how they're helping our whole family. If you'd like to learn more,
simply go to qsciences.focusedhealthyfamily.com. That's the letter Q, sciences.focusedhealthyfamily.com, and find out more information there.
and stop throwing your money away on supplements that don't work and use a quality product like Q Sciences.
And we're back. And today, again, we're talking with Dr. Chris Boman, and he is the founder of Trailhead Family Chiropractic. He offers a unique chiropractic experience, specializing in customized, compassionate care for babies, kids, and moms-to-be. He also emphasizes the needs of special population children, including those with Down syndrome, autism, cerebral palsy, and ADD. And you went through a lot of what I was going to say as far as how you got in. So I'm going to like zip right to the, I know you also, it does say here too, that you love spending time outdoors. And I know you're a hiker and a camper, and you even have a farm where you like to grow good food. And I think that's what in a way I'd like to start out with it. That was a great story, by the way. And I was, just so neat to hear that. And what I liked the best about it was the hope thing that you brought in there.
Mm-hmm.
You have something you want to add, Gina?
Yeah, I got chills as you told that story because I know I'm an occupational therapist, and even though I've worked more in adults and geriatric rehab, just understanding the challenges of kids with developmental disabilities and knowing, like you said, that the medical community is looking for pathology and not function so much. And just how powerful something like chiropractic can be in helping these kids. And it's just how lucky that mom was to find you, and just all the number of kids you've helped. So just thank you.
And the cool thing about that is, I've told this story hundreds of times. And so not only is that mom, got hope and care for their kid, but then now that his story has influenced hundreds, if not thousands of people, to get the care that they need. And that's what I love about chiropractic care and the holistic profession as a whole. It's like everything is abundant. Health becomes abundant. The story becomes abundant. Hope becomes abundant for not just them, but for everybody, and that's, I feel like how life was created. Like, you get 2 cells that become trillions of cells. There's no lack of organization. There's no lack of structure. There's no, what I mean? It's like life is abundant,
What I just realized
Did you forget to hit record?
No, it's recording. Okay, I'll have to take that part out. Sorry. It like hit me and like, oh God, did I do that or did I not? So anyway, I apologize for interrupting, but
Don can edit that out.
yeah, I'll have to make a note for that. Well, welcome. I forgot that part of it, so we're really glad that you're here because, like I said, the stuff I found out about you and just talking with you and looking at it was really super cool stuff. And I like this idea because you said now have you gotten to your new farm or the new house that you so you're and I like the way that you not only grow your own food for your family, but you kind of infiltrate that philosophy, that idea, and probably some of the products into your practice. I'd like to talk a little bit more about that. You're very passionate about that, I know.
Yeah. I mean, when I was in undergrad, I kind of ate the typical diet that college people do, whatever's cheap, pretty much. Maybe more earlier on, Taco Bell, Baja Blast, all that stuff.
Ramen noodles.
Yeah. As I got to the more advanced classes, my bachelor's is in exercise science, so we went into biochemistry and all the building blocks of health, optimal performance. Our research projects were with the hot shots in Montana, where we were researching like what are the calories, what are the things that they need to stay in the backcountry, so many days at a time and maintain peak performance without losing, brain function. And I started to realize like, man, food, what you put in matters. It's not just whatever fills you up and whatever is cheap. And there's a store that all my friends made fun of. It was called the Good Food Store, and they all called it the Bad Food Store because it's all your organic, like all of that stuff. And so I became the weird dude in my house of 7 college kids where I had the organic, I had, the Good Food Store. And when I got into chiropractic care, I really started to play with the different diets that were out there. Keto wasn't a thing yet, but I went raw for about 6 months. I basically went to Mother's Market, which is another, kind of like a good food store. And just basically got every vegetable. I had no idea how to eat them, how to cook them, or whatever. I just put it all on a big plate in the salad with a bunch of balsamic and whatnot, and just kind of experimented with like what is it like, and I couldn't believe the difference in my energy, in my output, and not just like I was buzzing till 12 p.m., but I had this ability to concentrate and really soak in information. I felt like my brain was a sponge versus everybody else is tuned out by 11 o'clock after, general anatomy class and biochem. Everybody's like, I'm done. And I'm like, well, I got more, and so the food thing has been really important for me since realizing its effects on myself. And then even more so now having kids and realizing like, sometimes you can't escape the macaroni or the chicken nuggets. Like that's all I want. And the battle is, it's not worth battling 7 days a week, So if they're going to eat that stuff, let's at least make sure we know where it comes from. We can control that. We can control where our cheese comes from, where our dairy comes from, where our chicken comes from. And so learning about what it's like to raise your own and then making friends in the industry. I don't know if you've heard of Paul Greaves from Pasture Bird. He's pretty popular, but he's one of my friends. And then Primal Pastures is out here in local, Southern California as well, talking about what the food industry is doing. You can be buying, and I don't know if your podcast is going to get flagged for this type of stuff, so I'll keep it like surfacey. But you can go buy, a labeled natural free range bird, and that bird can never see sunlight because that has the opportunity to leave the coop. It's considered free range. It's terrible, and that's just like I said, skimming the surface without giving you guys sued by Pfizer, whatever it is. But I realized like if I want real nutrition, I got to know what's in it. I either got to know the farmer or become the farmer. And so in COVID, when everything shut down, I didn't want to, put masks on my kids to go to the beach even, or, whatever. I'm like, well, we have some property. Let's just see what it's like to start farming. It'll be a good exercise for all of us. And so we started with a couple of pigs. We said, we can have these pigs. If we don't like it by the time they're grown out, maybe about a year or so, we can have bacon in our freezer for a couple of years and say we tried it and be done with it. As fate happened, maybe 2 months into having these pigs, a big German Shepherd that lives on a neighboring property above us got out ended up mauling one of our pigs. And so our hearts got attached to the other pig, obviously, that survived. And we're like, there's no way we can eat her after going through all this. So I guess we're breeding pigs now, and so we went from 2 pigs down to 1 pig to we bought it's called a barrow, a boar that's been castrated, and grew him out. And that was our first time growing our own, meat. And it tasted different. It was like, wow, like this, it's not super salty. Like doesn't taste old. Like it's just something that's different. There's something different about it, From pigs, we kind of moved into more chickens. We started working on our pasture. So we started rotating our animals, around, our chickens around, and we started, looking into dairy cows. And dairy was a thing for me. It's like, this is a real big animal. Like, I know I can't control this. Not that I can control a pig, but I know I can't control, like, this animal is just huge. Like, I'm intimidated by it. And so we started with a mini Jersey. And that was good, in a mini bull, and that kind of eased us into a cow. We ended up getting a bigger Jersey and Milk, who's our Jersey now. And just the more we've gotten into farming, the more we realize how industrial farming and mass production has really messed up the natural cycle and the natural ecosystems. Like, when you drive by a farm, it shouldn't smell. There shouldn't be big cesspools of feces and urine, and there shouldn't be all of that. There shouldn't be a need for antibiotics and vaccines for these animals. When you drove by, I mean, our farm now is basic stages, because we just moved here a week ago. But when you drove by our farm, we had animals everywhere, and it didn't smell. And every part of the process was used. Every part of the animal was used. Every part of, including the poop. We'd put our pigs in a smaller area. We'd put wood chips on their poop, and that process over 6 or 7 months would compost. We'd take the after we harvested the pigs, we'd go into the tractor, dig up all the compost, put it in our garden that would grow healthy fruits and vegetables for us, and which we'd throw, we'd eat, and then give them back to the pigs. There was no part of the process that was wasted. And we're like, man, like, that's how nature was. You get these big herd of buffalo that go in the Great Plains, and then you have the little antelope and whatnot that come through, and then you have the birds that come through, and then it rains and the land rests, right? The Great Plains didn't smell. It was this process of grazing and you got much bigger animals and bigger poops than some pigs and cows,
Right.
And so this is what I love about having my own homestead is I know where my food comes from. My kids are out, they're wasting, like throwing food to the chickens the other day, but they're out digging in the dirt. They're interacting with these animals, getting a diverse exposure to a microbiome, and bacteria that you don't get just sitting in a classroom. And they get life experience. Part of the talk that I gave at our last health and homesteading conference last June, as I talked about the emotional resiliency that you build being a homesteader. These kids get so excited, they plant their first, bean plant, or, whatever it is. And it starts to sprout, and, we're all excited. And a couple of days later, it's gone. A squirrel came in, bit it at its root, and it died. And it's super depressing for these little kids, and but then it's like, oh, it's okay. We have more, like, let's put more in, and same thing, like when we have our pigs, like, high chance, especially out of litters, my pigs typically give you litters of 10 to 13 pigs. High chance that one's not going to make it. It's just the moms don't have that many teats. There's too many kids going around, and a pig dies, and it's sad, and you honor it, and you don't just toss it by the wayside and say, that's not good production, or whatever it is. You thank the pig for its life, and same thing when we harvest. Thank you, chicken. Like, thank you for this life, and you use all of it. And so my kids have a very different relationship with life and death than these kids that are hooked on Call of Duty and Fortnite, and where they're just knifing and killing things all the time, where there's no respect for nature and for life itself. And so that's why I've really become I don't know if addicted is the right word, but to this homestead lifestyle, where it's become much more than just the chicken that we eat, the bacon that we eat, the garden, produce that we have. It's more about teaching my kids a process. You can't plant a seed and expect to eat it the next day. It's something that you wait, you care for, you nurture. There's highs, there's lows, and that's what life is about. You get a job, you don't get paid right away. Like I remember getting my first job. I had to go buy, $50 worth of, clothes, for my new job. And I'm like, all right, I got a job. When's my paycheck? It's like, oh, you got to work for a couple weeks first. I'm like, well, I guess that makes sense. Like, you know what I mean? And so it's life skills that you just don't get doing anything else other than farming.
Yeah, you mentioned something really powerful, the resilience that kids learn, because kids need to learn that, plants die, that something could happen, that they grow this, bean sprout like you talked about, and then, a squirrel eats it or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
We're always trying to help kids be happy, and we don't realize that by doing that, we're not allowing them to learn to deal with grief and loss and accept the ups and downs, that life has. So there's so much power in that, as well as everything you're talking about of kids knowing where their food comes from, not only for your health, but for their understanding of how their body works, understanding of how, all those processes work. And it's just wonderful. I'm ready to move on to a farm, Don. Let's do it.
Yeah. Thanks, Chris. I appreciate it.
Yep.
I was thinking of
we have friends with chickens, so we try to get our eggs locally. We do as much as we can. You're thinking about Charlotte's Web, Don?
Well, yeah, when you said about the pig, the one that might not make it, I don't know if you're familiar with Charlotte's Web and that story, but
Yes.
so anyway.
So thank you for sharing all about your farm, and that's just really so exciting. And I feel like we could have a whole conversation about that, but we also want to get into the chiropractic. And you've already talked about kind of how you got into it. I know I read from your website in that I believe you said you have a sister with special needs, and seeing how chiropractic helped her even before you went to chiropractic school. Am I saying that right?
Yeah, she didn't have special needs. She struggled with chronic ear infections, asthma, and allergies. So she got the tube surgery, went on antibiotics a bunch of times, had the inhaler, all this stuff. And we're actually sitting in a pediatrician office ready for a second consult for tube surgery. And a gal overheard and said, you should go try my chiropractor. And my mom's desperate at this point. Like, no one wants to put their kids on medications or surgery, no matter how minor or how brief. So we tried it. And after the first adjustment, she never had any of those things ever again. And it's just amazing, the different life that she could have had. She could have, there's not a good prognosis after a second time cutting the eardrum. You're going to have some scarring, some hearing loss, or you're going to have some issues, and so that was kind of my first exposure to chiropractic care. And my family started getting, regularly adjusted. I was about 7, my sister was about 5. So I've been getting adjusted, for the majority of my life, which I'm very thankful for. And I think it's contributed to. Played 4 years of football, never had a major injury. Played 4 years of pole vault, never had a major injury. I'm 8 years into my high volume practice. I don't have any major injuries versus most people have some sort of, shoulder blown out or hip, instability or something like that. And I think a lot of it's due to, like, I take care of my body, and chiropractic's the major contributor to that. It's part of my recovery from the stress that I put in my system.
Sure. Yeah, that's powerful. I remember reading that your sister had asthma and things, and my brother from a young age, my younger brother, had asthma and allergies and eczema, and my parents, he was born in 1972, would take him to the emergency room in the middle of the night when he couldn't breathe, and they never chanced upon anyone with chiropractic care. This was in Ohio in the 1970s. And just reading that, going, I wonder how different his, things could have been for him had they found that. So
Yep. And the story that I said in the beginning, that's what most people would consider a chiropractic miracle. You know what I mean? It's like there's a complete 180, or 540, however many times you're going around, change of life. But to me, what I always tell my patients is the miracle stories for me are the ones that I see preconception all the way through pregnancy. I see after birth, and they're 5 years old, never had an ear infection, hardly ever been sick, don't have any speech delays, don't have any motor delays. And those are the ones where it's like, statistics say you should have got some of those things. Like, you know what I mean? Over 40% of our kids, and these are old stats, pre-COVID stats, over 40% of our kids struggle from or suffer from one of 20 health conditions, chronic diseases. So chances are, you look at a kid to your right and to your left, one of them has something: diabetes, asthma, cancer, neurodevelopmental, whatever it is. ADHD is 1 in 10, autism's 1 in 54 or higher. Anxiety is even worse. Depression is even worse. Depression is ready to become the #1 health disability.
I believe it.
Worldwide.
I believe
it's crazy. I mean, it's and people wonder like, well, why do you spend $20 on a tomato? Because of the cost to build my garden and the composting and all of that stuff. And it's like, I'd rather invest that than what happens down the line. That $20 is nothing compared to the type of investment you're going to have to make in time and no answers, and the whole merry-go-round that you go through when you're just going to people looking for pathology rather than functional deficits.
Right. And preventative care, chiropractic, I've been going to chiropractic care for a long time, and there's a lot of preventative that goes on, and just the importance of that. And the same thing with the food you eat. You can spend more money on your food now and spend less on healthcare costs down the road, whether it's 5 years down the road or 50 years down the road. It's going to have ramifications. So talking about working with kids, what I'm curious about, because we've taken our kids to chiropractors, but we've never gone to a pediatric chiropractor. So wondering what the difference is in regards to that.
Yeah, great question. So all chiropractors coming out of school, that are licensed chiropractors can see kids. There's no like special certification or anything like that that makes it legal or whatever. Just in school, you don't get a lot of exposure to pediatric chiropractic. You maybe get one semester or so, depending on the school that you go to. So most chiropractors, it actually kind of intimidates them because they only see a kid a month, or maybe they only do their own kids, or something like that. So as far as the difference goes, it's almost like, I want to get foot surgery. I'm not going to go to a general MD that maybe learned the basic procedures in school, but has never done it. Like, I'm going to go to someone that does it over and over and over and over again. And there are advanced certifications that you can get that I've got as well. There's programs, the most widely accepted and I don't know, the diverse, like they're across the globe. A certified agency is the International Chiropractic Pediatric Association, the ICPA. They take courses all over. Where there's a chiropractic school, they host courses, and they have 3 levels now of certification. They have an advanced perinatal certification. They have a certified, pediatric chiropractor, and they have a diplomat in chiropractic pediatric, each with their increasing levels of intensity of school and proficiency and, whatnot. So if you're looking for a pediatric chiropractor, I highly recommend that you go to the ICPA website. It's this ICPA, the number 4kids.com, and go to the directory there. They have the chiropractors listed with their different levels, even if they're associated with the organization and haven't quite done, all the classes or passed the test. There's a lot of doctors that have taken 2 or 3 of the classes, but never, passed the test, that are much more knowledgeable than someone that, mainly sees athletes, but then can also see kids. Like, you know what I mean?
Right.
In my opinion, and I'll be, and what I was going to bring up as well, in my opinion, and not to put down anyone in the profession or bash anyone, but there's a lot of chiropractors that don't use any objective basis for their care. They just kind of, you walk in, you do your history, say, okay, lay down and see you next week. Like there's no real guide or timeline or plan or baseline or remeasure, because most chiropractors kind of base their care on symptoms. If your back doesn't hurt anymore, you don't need to come in, and where I think you'll find that the truly experienced, expertise, proficient, high caliber chiropractors is the one that do some sort of objective measure. Typically we don't x-ray in kids. It's not unheard of. There's certain techniques that do x-ray in kids. And in today's day and age, the x-rays are super low radiation, so I'm not 100% against it if it gives a chiropractor certainty. I'd rather have that than nothing, although that's lowest on my recommendation list. The next thing, and it's what a lot of my colleagues use, it's called the Insight Subluxation Station. We have 5 different things that we can use. Most use 2 to 3. The first one, like I mentioned in my story, is infrared thermography. Okay, it's got 2 infrared cameras. And for our kids, we say we're doing a race car up their spine, and what it's doing is it's measuring the difference in skin temperature from one side to another. Okay, it's not necessarily looking for like a 98.6 or anything like that. It's measuring the balance or function of the autonomic nervous system. If you have a major skin difference from one side to the another, unless you just like put ice on it or had your heated seats going or something like that. If there's a big enough difference, that means your autonomic nervous system at that level is not working the way it's supposed to. Therefore, the nerves that are going inside your body, to your digestive system, to your reproductive system, to your endocrine system, all those different systems, is most likely also going to be dysfunctional. And so we do a test where it gives us a color readout of white, green, blue, or red bars. And so we'll show them, you have like the little boy that I was telling you about in my story. He had big red bars right at the base of his skull because of the super traumatic birth process. Up here is also the start of the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve is the major balance of your parasympathetic nervous system. For those that don't know, you have your autonomic nervous system. Sounds like automatic. So just think of it like that, where everything in your body that's happening that you don't think about. Your heart rate, your breathing, your digestion, hormone control, fluid levels, all that stuff that's happening underneath the surface that your brain is doing just without conscious control. You have two basic behaviors within that. When you're stressed, you have your sympathetic, so high blood pressure, high cortisol, high adrenaline, epinephrine, high blood pressure, eyes dilate, all that, ready to go, ready to run, fight, flight, freeze. Then you have your parasympathetic, which is when you're chilling at the end of the day. You had a big turkey Thanksgiving dinner and you're just resting, digesting, and healing. Your vagus nerve is what regulates most of that parasympathetic nervous system, and it starts right at the base of your skull. So if you have a traumatic birth, that could cause inflammation to that point in which the parasympathetic isn't going to be functional, because inflammation means stress. Right. And so I'm able to tell this mom, hey, most likely your kid's going to have ear infections, asthma, anxiety, reflux, constipation, colic. All these things are usually the result of stress to the upper cervical spine. And so we do the test, we do the procedure, which is the adjustment. Like I mentioned, it's super simple. And then over the course of time, we recheck. And so no, we're not dependent on symptoms to know whether the kid is getting better or not. We're actually able to see through the test that the inflammation is getting better, right? Through older kids, we also do something called surface EMG, which is measuring the amount of muscle tension going on. The tighter the muscles, the more sympathetic fight or flight, is going on. And then I don't do it in my office anymore because we're more of a high volume, but we do heart rate variability, which has become pretty popular through like the Apple Watches and those sort of things these days. Through our older kids, we also do a posture analysis. So this whole conglomerate of data gives us a really good idea, not pathology, but functional deficits, right? And then based upon the severity of the functional deficits, we can then say, hey, we need to see you every day. We need to see you every other day for this many days before we recheck. And then after the recheck, when we see improvement, now we decrease frequency as your body's holding the adjustment. Your body's staying in balance longer and longer. So the absolute most long-winded answer to your question, that's the difference between pediatric chiropractic, but then, and more importantly, finding a chiropractor that I think is going to be more than just a walk in, get an adjustment and leave, but someone that can actually be your guide to a healthy functioning body rather than just a technician that's doing an adjustment.
Right. Well, yeah, you answered my next question as well. Just because Don and I have been to several chiropractors, we know different chiropractors use different techniques. I went to one for years who did Chinese medicine as well as chiropractic care. And I think whatever you were talking about with the different color readout, the last chiropractor we went to did that kind of scan on us, and it's kind of fun to look at the colors and to see and where the nerve irritation is going on. So thank you for explaining all that, reiterating all that in a way everybody can understand it. I'm sort of a brain neurology nerd as being an occupational therapist. I worked in brain injury for a while, so that's kind of my area of thing related with mental health and brain function. But
and what's really cool, I'll add this in. Going to a chiropractor that knows their science is really helpful too. Not just because it's a smart chiropractor. I'm not the smartest of them all for sure, but the science gives you certainty, right? And so the more things that they know, the more I know that I know that I know. When I adjust your little boy, he's going to poop. So go straight home and come back tomorrow. And the mom can look at me, even though I'm 25 with 6 months of experience, haven't handled many babies. I know that I know that I know what's going to happen. And there's a lot of studies, more and more coming out. There's a PhD neurologist and chiropractor named Heidi Havoc out of Australia, and she published a study that showed the correlation between spinal manipulation and frontal cortex activation.
Wow.
Which is crazy because and I don't know how much your listeners are going to want to listen to this part, but your prefrontal cortex is responsible for gross motor control and your rational judgment and decision making. what most people complain to me about with kids with ADD, ADHD is lack of control. They're impulsive, right? Because they're acting with their amygdala, which is their fear center. And so the two can't be on at the same time. You're either reacting or you're making a judgment call, right? And so the fact that we make an adjustment, we see the prefrontal cortex light up means that the amygdala is turning off. And the more times we do that, we're rerouting the way the brain processes sensory information. I mean, and that's just like baseline. There's another one that they did where they did a functional MRI and showed, they did a bunch of different measurements, but the main one was cerebral glucose metabolism. So the more glucose the brain is taking in, the higher functioning, so the more kind of like stress that's going on, right? They did it pre-adjustment, got a level. They did it post-adjustment, and this was just someone for neck and back pain, nothing, no symptoms out of the ordinary. And they found glucose metabolism sharply decreased, indicating a correlation between someone was in pain, so they're in high sympathetic fight or flight, post-adjustment, reduced glucose metabolism now into more of that parasympathetic, healing state. And that's just two of like thousands and hundreds of studies that are out there that show, from osteopathic to physical therapist to chiropractic, the manipulation of the spine. I think it's much different the way chiropractors do it, has an impact on the proprioceptive system, which therefore has an impact on the way the brain actually processes its outside world, right? And that to me is just mind-blowing. Like with that sort of science out there, why isn't every pediatrician saying, look, go try this first, if that doesn't work,
right,
come back and we'll dig deeper,
like you said, the science is out there, the research is out there, but yeah, why are they not, integrative medicine is something we're seeing a little bit more of, people who have an MD, but it's not enough. And but yet it's so powerful.
Well, Gina will have to translate all this for me later. So
yeah.
And I'll probably put a disclaimer on here, warning, TMI coming up, but no, I'm just kidding. No, that was wonderful stuff. And I understand a good bit of that, most of it. So that, because
Gina can do a post-podcast like debrief. Thank you for listening. So if you're wondering what happened
for the hearing impaired, he said,
and Gina has so many more questions that I'm not going to ask because to not get too scientific. But yeah, it's powerful, and when you see it that plainly and that clearly, that the manipulation, how it affects the brain, it's
well, it's probably frustrating because you can't, not everybody gets it or and you want everybody to get it,
but that's why I'm thankful for people like you, like, you know what I mean? Like, let's just have a conversation. Even if one person ever listens to this and it's that kid, that mom with that 7-month-old, that's like, that's me. And she goes and her life has changed. Like, it's worth it, and that's why I love coming on these podcasts. And I love people like you guys that are just willing to put information out there, and help other people. And that's why I love this digital era, where you and I can be talking from completely different states and completely different time zones. Yeah, information is going to go worldwide.
Yeah, well, it is amazing. And go ahead, Don.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, yeah, it is amazing. And just that ability to connect, we hear a lot of negative things about technology and how it affects us. And, here you are, a homesteader, yet also appreciating the technology and how we can use it to get information out, to connect with people. We're on the East Coast of North Carolina, you're in California. But we can, have shared experiences and information to, like you said, I feel that way about the work Don and I do with these podcasts. If it helps one person, then it's worth it.
Yep.
Well, you talked about the parent that kind of like you tell him to go home because he's going to poop, and they kind of roll their eyes and they come back the next day surprised. I get that when I tell I do EFT, the tapping process, and I talk to parents about surrogate tapping, which is tapping on yourself for someone else, because we used it extensively with my one daughter. But I get that same, the parents, I'll be telling about that, and they're like, yeah, right, whatever, and they leave. And then they'll come back like a week later when I'm working with them and go, oh my God, that really works, So it does. It's a good feeling when you can show some effect like that. I thought maybe talk just a little bit, because you do have a book, and I thought it would be good to kind of And I apologize. I would have looked this up and studied it more beforehand. I didn't think about it, so I apologize. But if you could tell us a little bit about the book, it would be
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, I'd love to. It's another product of COVID, sitting down with a lot of time, and I went through, as passionate as I am, as many success stories as I am, or as I've had. In 2019, you guys still with me? Okay, cool. I didn't know if you froze. Sorry. I'll start over. In 2019, I thought I was all that. My practice was going up, my finances were going up, and I'm like, I don't want this to stop. And my marketing had only been for kids, for pediatrics, for neurodevelopmental, for baby. I never wanted to see a Joe Schmo low back pain, even though I did see them. They happened to stumble through the door. Like, they didn't hear me saying, got backaches, come see me. Like, some chiropractors do that. It's just not me. It's not who I wanted to my primary clientele to be. But I decided, if I want my practice to grow, I need to become a little bit more of a wider, cast a wider net. So I hired an associate. I brought on an expensive marketing team to do that, to kind of throw my niche to the wayside and just say, we're a chiropractor for everybody now. New patients didn't come in. Free ones did, but they never signed up for care. Because I was selling them something that they didn't want. They wanted a quick fix, and I wanted to sell them what I was used to selling my other people. I was down to one staff member. I had to lay off the rest of them. I was down to $300 left in my business bank account. And I was like, what in the world? Like, here I am. I'd been so successful. I'd helped so many people. How am I at this spot where I don't know if I can pay rent? I don't know if I can make payroll. I don't know if this is for me anymore. And I considered just selling it, being done with it, getting a job, at another chiropractor's office, just clocking in, clocking out, being done with the entrepreneurial dream, and I tried, it didn't work, and blah, blah, blah. And I was about to hit submit on a PayPal loan, and just to carry me through the holidays, hoping things would, kind of get better in January, February, as they usually do. And my wife said, hey, did you pray about that yet? And I'm like, no, but no other option. Like, and she's like, I suggest you pray about it. And, I'm very thankful for that moment, because it showed me that I was relying on myself, doing what I wanted to do, rather than actually, what is my purpose? What is my calling? Asking those questions before just saying, I want more growth, whatever. So I closed it, never hit submit. The people called me and they said, hey, you're approved. Like, you got this and that. Don't you want? I'm like, nope, sorry. Like, I don't, something's going to happen. And enough new patients came to pay payroll and pay rent, and that happened for about a month and a half, where I had just enough. I went to a seminar, and there's a bunch of chiropractors there that, we're talking about their wins, and almost none of them talked about their new car. Almost all of them talked about the stories that I had when I was brand new in practice. This kid that got hope again, this mom that couldn't conceive and all of a sudden got pregnant, this mom that was breached, I was going to have a C-section in the baby flip, all these amazing stories. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I substituted my patients for stat lines. My people became, revenue. I saw dollar signs instead of, little kid having a soccer game and, all of that stuff. And so I'm like, I have nothing more that I can do marketing at this point anyways. I'm just going to love the people that I have and see what happens. And back to what really got me into chiropractic, that shiver moment of like, I can't imagine how frightening it must be for kids to be locked out of a world they want to be a part of. And we went from just enough to a little bit more, and then COVID hit. And everybody else was, retracting, not marketing, saying what the heck, closing their office down. And I'm like, no, my patients need me now more than ever. And so I was going to different, coffee shops and saying, stay open. Here's $100. This will fund the next 10 people that come in, to the different restaurants and whatnot that I love, that were next to my office. And I realized what I had gained through that really hard time was the abundance mindset, where it's not about me. It's about the value that I bring to others. It's not about what I can get. It's how much I can serve others. And the more people that I serve, the more people that I see, that's obviously going to be more money. That's obviously going to mean more opportunity, because they're paying me to see them, So instead of trying to figure out how I can get more people, I switched my thinking to, how can I serve more people? How can more people get the information that I have? And how can I get my hands on these people, And so that's when I realized, like, okay, this is powerful. If people can just get that, whether they're new, whether they're that stuck CEO, whether they're retired. That shift in perspective is the key, in my opinion, to abundance and success. And so that's where I started kind of just really writing. We went on a road trip to Idaho. I had my wife drive, and I just wrote and brainstormed. And so most of the book was really written in a weekend. Obviously, it took me about a year and a half to really flesh it out and whatnot. But it's really about this accumulation of my success as a chiropractor, my downfall as a chiropractor, but then my expertise into the neurology, where I believe someone can't tap into the abundance mindset if they're neurologically stuck in that state of fight or flight. It's just not possible. So let's get your health right, and then you can get your mind right, and then you can start really living a life of purpose, of vision. And so it combines my expertise as a farmer, as a chiropractor, as a marketer, as an entrepreneur, and then just as a dad. Like these are the things that I've learned that will lead you to success and abundance, more than just a Ferrari or the mansion, but living a life fulfilled and a life profitable, but more than just financially, where you see the product of your investment in your kids and in your food and in your patients. And like I got sick this past couple of days. I had to actually close a practice, which has never happened to me before. And all my patients are texting me like, hope you're okay, all of this and that. Like, if they just saw me as someone that cracked their back when they were hurt, they wouldn't care. It's like, why isn't the doc in? I'm hurting, but all of them are like, get better. Like, we can't wait to see you when you get back, and, all that sort of stuff. So that's really what the book is about. It's for those people that are stuck, looking for purpose, looking for fulfillment, looking for this life that's more than just about finances or clocking in and clocking out, that want to live a life of purpose.
Right.
That's kind of who it's for.
That's wonderful. We talk about abundance mindset and all those kinds of things, and I just love that you went into that. Tell us the name of your book and where people can find it.
It's called Perspective: Rewire Your Brain for Success and Abundance. You can find it on Amazon, and all the other kind of little sites that you can find it on too.
Okay, and we'll be sure to share links to that in the notes of the.
Yeah, we'll have the book up there, and I'll and I know you do consulting to other practices. So if people want to find out more about you, about your consulting, about even your farming, what ways can they do that? What's the best way for them to find out more about you?
Sure. Yeah. Well, as people started reading my book, like, hey, I got this problem. Like, can you give me some perspective? And so I'm like, well, sure. And as it happened over and over again, I'm like, well, this is working. Like, I love helping people, but people tend to invest more in themselves when they pay for it. So it wasn't necessarily like, oh, here's now I can make more money, but here's a way to hold yourself accountable to take action on the things that I give you, because I don't want to invest time giving you advice and you not take it. So that's really why I started consulting, is I love seeing service professionals successful. They don't get business training, they don't get marketing training, they don't get that opportunity to learn how to run a business in school. Gina, as an OT, as doing your stuff, Don, it's you don't get that business stuff. Most of us service professionals make it because we're good practitioners, but we can be doing so much more, and be financially free if we just had that little bit of business knowledge,
Right.
So that's why I help service professionals that are stuck, that are looking to grow, that are looking to scale, that have been stuck for a long time at this same spot and want to just grow. The best way, just probably Instagram or email. My Instagram is my handle is at Dr. Chris Boman, no W in Boman. If you want to follow our farm, it's at First Fruits Homestead, and then my practice is at Trailhead Chiro. Another thing that we're doing, if people are interested in coming to Southern California, we're putting on our second annual Health and Homesteading Conference, and so that's where it combines the skills of homesteading with making your own sourdough, having your own eggs, making your own holistic remedies, and learning about GMOs, food labeling, all of that stuff. That's coming up February 25th. You can learn more at healthandhomesteading.com. Tickets are only $45. There's plenty of great places to stay out here as well. So those are all the things that I'm doing, all the places that you can find me.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
Well, it has been a joy to meet you and to talk with you. You've got your stories are great. I love
and as you shared so much, I see having another conversation with you again in the future, because there's just so many areas that you talked about that fit right in with everything that we're trying to do, reaching families and helping families find better connection and purpose and, functioning better.
Awesome.
Being.
Yeah, I'd be happy to.
Well, again, thank you for being part of this. We really enjoyed it.
Yes,
Of course. Yep. Thank you for the conversation.
and so you can find all the links that Dr. Chris talked about. That's our podcast for today. We hope you've enjoyed it. Thank you for joining us. Be sure to leave us a comment or feedback and share this with other people. You can learn more about us and the links to Dr. Chris at healthyfamily.com. Follow us on Instagram, Gina at Focused Healthy Family. You can, on our website, find our blogs, our links to our other podcasts. And remember, how you speak to your children today shapes their future.